And can we learn from other transportation solutions, especially when they don't occur here in the U.S.? Sandra Akmansoy, okay, I'm going to get it right, trust me, is a civil engineer, began her career with ARUP in 2003 in ARUP's Madrid office. In 2012, she opened ARUP's first permanent office in Copenhagen. She led the formation of ARUP's Denmark group. And under her leadership, the Copenhagen office has participated in many notable building infrastructure projects, including the City Ringen metro expansion. This is going to throw you for a loop. The Fehmarnbelt tunnel. Okay, well, that was almost. And the Camp Adventure Observation Tower. That's an easy one. During her tenure, Sandra saw the expansion of ARUP's Denmark team to nearly 70 people and fostered the growth of the Copenhagen office infrastructure and building practices. She's worked and delivered projects in over 15 countries, and she speaks 4 languages fluently. Sandra relocated to Dallas. We're welcome to have her here. She came in August 2019 to lead the development of ARUP's office. And please welcome Sandra to the podium.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Quite an honor to be here. Like Peter said, we're going in a totally different direction here in terms of what I will be speaking about in 20 minutes. A few years ago, ARUP published a book, I guess, about the future of rail. And in it, we talked about changing demographics, more people living in cities, more intelligent system, like the previous presenter just discussed, new technologies and alternative fuels that could lower the costs of rail in the future. But I think the conclusion of this Future of Rail book, what really it pinpoints is that we'll have major urban developments around rail and very multidisciplinary approach to rail and all types of rail. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Now, some of you might be wondering who or what is ARUP. ARUP is named after our founder, Owen Arup. He was British. He founded a company in London in 1946. And about 50 years ago, he wrote what we call the key speech, which is basically our mission statement. And I think what's important about that is that in it he talks about total architecture. Not architects, we're essentially engineers, but total architecture for him, a multidisciplinary approach to solving problems in a multidimensional way. And I think when I look at rail, I think of rail as total rail. It's not just one type of rail solutions. It has to be integrated with other types of rail or other types of infrastructure. In ARUP, just some quick statistics. We're 16,000 people. When I joined ARUP, we were 4,000 people, but we don't acquire companies. We grow by following clients. For example, we followed Texas Central here to Dallas and DFW Airport. That's how we opened our Dallas office, for example. But moving on, the United Nations developed the Sustainable Development Goals a few years ago. And at ARUP, we really embrace these. And I think when we look at the 17 goals, there's 2 in particular that are really important to rail, which is SDG 9 and SDG 11. And it's really important to remember that infrastructure projects and rail projects really drive the economy. It's been proven over and over again. And if we look at some of our projects worldwide, what all of these will have in common is that as a result of these projects, the economy really developed, and the access to people to go to their jobs, to go to school, or different communication methods really improved. And I think that's what's really notable about rail projects. I think, seeing from this morning, there's been a lot of talk about freight rail. And I just wanted to recap 3 different types of rail that we work at ARUP. The first one, of course, is urban rail. the statistics they say is by 2050, 75% of populations will be in cities. Well, we can't all get into our cars. We can't all be in autonomous vehicles. Public infrastructure and rail is the best way to get around. And I just wanted to go over a few projects that we worked on at ARUP, that I've worked on, that are exemplary in that field. The first one is the Ringen Metro. I think one of the misconceptions that I've seen since moving back to Texas, where I grew up, is that, metros and subways are for large cities. There's only 800,000 people living in Copenhagen. They have a metro line. They had for 2 years, 2 metro lines for probably about 20 stations, and they just opened in September this circular line that we designed. We did the station design and the tunnel design. But what's interesting also about it is that it's driverless. So one of the train is just a window, and my kids, in fact, all kids in Copenhagen, like to sit up front and pretend they're driving the train. And it's actually a lot of fun. But I think what is notable is that the metro is interlinked with the regional train. It's interlinked with access, well, it goes to the airport. And it has direct access to the trains that go to Sweden and Germany. And I think that's what makes it success, is that it doesn't stand alone. It interacts with other form of rail. Another project that my colleagues worked on and that I've reviewed a little bit is one of the metro lines in Istanbul. Now in Istanbul, they say there's 20 million people. Sometimes they say there's 25 million people. But the success of this project and metros, again, is interlinking with other solutions. In Istanbul, they have dedicated bus lines and dedicated light rail systems, and they've really used trams and roads as well as traditional rail to integrate the city, and you have to do that when you have 25 million people. So again, rail projects in urban cities can be successful for small cities as well as large cities. Obviously, I didn't work on this, but it's one of our notable projects in China. Again, very large populations, but the key to it was to include the regional development, the regional trains, as well as the LRT, because it's about blending different rail projects together. You can argue with me this isn't really a rail project. It's somewhere between autonomous vehicle to rail, and certainly it's only 18 of them, but maybe this is the future of how you get around. This is outside of Heathrow Airport. It's just to get to the parking, but ARUP worked on it, and it's low energy. People feel like it gives them that autonomy, yet it's public infrastructure. So again, the future is looking very different, and there are different ways of looking at passenger solutions that could satisfy all sorts of people. I think that what's interesting about this is in Australia, is Brisbane has really invested a lot of money on its infrastructure, but what they forgot about was getting to the airport. And apparently, if you want to take trains to get to the airport in Brisbane, it takes about an hour and a half. And, my observation is, again, if we're talking about cities, the rail within the city has to interlink with the airport, because that's what people do. They need to get to the airport. And if you can't use the train to get to the airport, then you have to go back to using a car, and that makes it a little less attractive. I really believe in integrated solutions for the city, metros, light rails, buses also, but access to the airport is key. Another thing that obviously ARUP does a lot of is inter-rail projects, so city to city, obviously high speed. We started that really in 1988 in the UK, very notable high-speed solutions there, and we're still working on high-speed solutions around the world. I was the project director for this project. Another misconception sometimes is that infrastructure projects, rail projects should be developed really fast. This project actually started in 2008 and will be completed in 2028. So that's 20 years. Now, of course, it includes one of the longest immersed tube tunnels in the world, and it's a crossing between two countries. there are complexities around the law of two countries. But I think that what's notable about this project is that it's linking highway with rail. So of course, like a lot of times it's high-speed rail, and when you get into the tunnel, it will slow down and speed back up. But I do think that we could all benefit of seeing rail together with highways when it works. And we've seen around the world that there are many times that it does work very, very well. Of course, I just wanted to quickly go through some of our most notable high-speed rail projects, and just a few. Of course, the Texas Central, on which we've been working for the past couple of years, the UK, in Italy, in China. And I think that, again, if you look at the detail of these projects, what has been key is that the high-speed rail, when your passenger gets somewhere, there's another mode of transportation. It doesn't just end there. Because otherwise you're just creating another bottleneck or another problem, or you're making it less attractive. And many of these projects, there's elaborate station, and then maybe a metro, a light rail, or whatever, but it's not just high speed by itself. Oh, I had another page. So these are some other examples that we have. ARUP doesn't really do rail designs. We will logistics and different things, or when we do bridges, sometimes rail will go on those bridges. But I do think it's, as some of the presenters earlier today presented, it's a fascinating way of getting materials around. And just like I was explaining, the conclusion of our future rail book is, there's so much to be done around technology and being more innovative so that we can follow our goods going from place A to B. So, if I look at these three types of rail, what I think has been really made a difference in their success is when they're integrated, not when they're separate. And that might not always be possible, but whenever possible, we should ask ourselves if we're working in isolation or if there's a better way of integrating other infrastructure projects. Another topic that I wanted to discuss with you today, just as an observation of my years of experience in coming back to Texas, is ARUP. We often work on design and procurement, but we often have a chance to influence policy and strategy and early project development. And one of the projects that I think works the best in explaining how you can integrate things is one in Madrid we've been working on with the government there, both City Hall, the city government, and the state of Madrid. You can see this as an aerial photo. You can obviously see the highway and the rail. And I think what's really interesting in this project is how we've integrated all sorts of rail together. So this is just a map. What you see as Chamartín is high-speed rail throughout Spain. Also have the metro there and a regional train. Fuencarral is the freight train comes in, and obviously you can see the metro line L1 that goes around Madrid and L10 that goes to the airport, I believe. And I think that what we've been doing there is working with the government, the stakeholders there in rerouting some of those trains so that they can be integrated in one, and but also making sure that we can create more space for the city, parks, offices, retail, commercial space. And it's actually worked very well, and this is just highlighting how much of that area we've been able to redevelop for green zones as well as retail, commercial, and other things. And this is just an image of what it will look like. So basically we'll be burying everything under the ground. Most of these towers on the right side already exist in Madrid, but the part there with the grassy part, that's the development. And that's what you can create when you think holistically, when you think about total architecture, and when you work with all the stakeholders at government and public levels, and of course different commercial stakeholders. I think the one thing that I've seen in Europe that works really, really well are the stations, and using those as commercial elements to the city, making them beautiful and attractive to people. Kind of like the old train stations up north here, in New York or Pennsylvania and things like that used to be. There used to be a sense of community to go to the station. And I think in Europe and other places in the world, they've really kind of embraced that again. And it's been really prosperous. This is some of the best shopping you can do, actually, is at train stations. Coming back to this, another observations made is around procurement. I feel sometimes that we get rutted into a form of procurement. So for those people out here that are clients or who manage procurement, I would encourage you to always revisit the type of procurement you want to do. In my view, there's no right or wrong single approach to procurement for any one client or any one project. You really have to just think about the pros and cons of every situation. But what we've seen with the Fehmarn Belt tunnel link between Denmark and Germany is that they employed a competitive dialogue with the design and build contract, and that really allowed really great technical solutions that led to very good cost solutions. Now, they had the luxury of time in that instance, but I do think that I would encourage always, when starting out a project, to rethink about your procurement methods instead of just going along with what you did on your last project. And of course, that's the sort of thing that we try to do at ARUP. So coming back to experiences globally and what I think the key learnings are is cities and businesses together and these developments around rail projects, they're good socially, they're good economically, and of course they're better for the environment and sustainability. But what we've really seen is they've really developed a whole new city or new approach to working and commuting and things like that, and they're really worth the investment, even though sometimes they might be long. I also think that infrastructure systems need to compete. They can complement each other. Different types of rail can complement each other. Highways and rails projects can complement each other. So my learning has always been to question whether we can make a project even better by including other types of infrastructure. And I also think that what I've learned in other parts of the world is that engaging with all types of stakeholders is really key. One, because infrastructure projects are so long, important to get public support, but also because there's so much to learn and so many constraints or barriers or ideas that might be out there. And there could be city and concessionaires and contractors and people, but I really think having that dialogue early on is really important. So, what does this mean locally? What should we do? Well, I don't really know because I've only got back to Texas in August, but I do think that rail projects are really unique. They're beautiful, sustainable, and I think that, what I would always recommend here in Texas is that we're inclusive and we think broadly about the problem that we're trying to solve, because engineering is actually about solving problems. And let's try to think about how we can get people or goods around more broadly. I would encourage, like I just explained, to think about procurement and to think creatively instead of just doing what's been done before. And I really think that, around the rail space, when you get into the station or the end destination, creating a public space, creating an environment that's safe, beautiful, and fun can create so much, not just for the community, but for the businesses around it. And that's worth the investment. And I just put the logos of, from the UN SDGs, rail projects, they really show, they contribute to so much more. One thing I just wanted to mention as to why, for example, in Scandinavia, they invest so much in rail projects and public infrastructure is because it's been proven that people that commute through a public infrastructure, so rail or subway instead of their cars, have less health problems. So they did a calculation to the Social Security cost of people becoming ill or less ill because they're taking trains. And that's how they came up with their elaborate calculation. It's worth to invest in metros and light rail systems. And that's why I put number 3 there about health and well-being. When people commute through trains, there's also a sense of community. You talk to other people, et cetera, et cetera. It develops, this decent work, economic growth as a result, and of course, as I said, sustainable cities and a responsible consumption, and it's what we like to say, shape a better world. So I think that was my last thing. Thank you very much.